everybody, welcome to another episode of Face the Truth. It's good to see you. Thank you for joining me this week. I'm very excited to have the artist I have on as a guest. He's been an inspiration of mine since my early days of getting into illustration, specifically caricature illustration. Been a big fan of his work for a long time. Just love his use of color, his caricaturing, his exaggeration, his use of light and soft edges and blurred characters and all this kind of, there's a lot about his work that was definitely a huge inspiration early on in my career. So we also are both working on a deadline this week with the same client, so that's kind of a cool weird coincidence. And so we got to talk about that a little bit, which was really cool. And but more than that, I'm so thankful that he was able to take the time off from working on the deadline to be able to talk with me. So that was pretty cool. So anyways, yeah, there's not much else to say. So everyone, please welcome James Bennett. We're rolling. Okay. Awesome. All right. Thanks so much for joining me, man. This is so cool.
My pleasure. This is very cool for me. I never get to do this, so.
Well, man, I've known of you and your work for a very long time. And it's funny, I was trying to think about it. You know, like one of my I guess personal kind of achievements in my personal career was when I finally got to a point where I was being published in some of the same publications as you, or like CF Payne. Like you guys, I think of the godfathers of caricature illustration, and for me personally, was definitely you, CF Payne, maybe Roberto Prada, David Levine, however you want to say it. There's a handful of these artists that were inspiring and influenced my work.
Sure.
And then when I finally started getting represented by Richard, I was like, oh my gosh, I'm with the same guys. And that kind of like legitimized things for me, where I'm like, okay, I'm at that point where I feel like, all right, I'm with the big boys now. And then now I feel like I need to step it up more. You know what I mean? Like if I'm going to be represented by the same thing, I need to like start working harder.
I went through the exact same thing. I mean, just
earlier
than you did, you know, when Chris Payne introduced me to Richard's group, and you know, and Richard was like, well, you know, would you consider being with us? I always thought this is like being considered, do I want to join the Beatles? You know, like it's so good. His whole group of artists that I was like, wow, I'm going to have to get much better than the spot illustrations I was doing at the time, you know, and it's very inspiring. I mean, I think everybody, you have to know other work to really appreciate it and to know what you want to do. So
yeah, for sure.
Right, that's the best thing. That's a nice compliment, I think.
Oh no, it's funny because I'm pretty much self-taught, and I learned from looking at your guys' work. But I didn't really know anything about painting when I first started. I just wanted to do it. Mm-hmm. And I remember I had like tear sheets of yours and Chris's and even Daniel Dell, and just I always tell people my studio at the time looked like a serial killer lair. Like I had just all these things, and I had like, you know, little Post-it notes with little red marker things like, okay, look at the hands on this one. Look, you know, so I just was like trying to figure out how to do it. And when I finally went to art school, I only went for like a year and a half or so.
Where did you go?
The American Academy of Art. And yeah, in Chicago here. Mm-hmm. But when I was there, I think it was one of my English classes or something, but we had to write a paper about our art that we want to do in our life, and you know, basically everything about it. So I just wrote a whole thing about caricature. I went all the way back to Monet, and then I talked about my current inspirations, and I remember like you were one of the artists that came up, and I even had a Weekly Standard cover of yours with gosh, what's his name? The guy like he's like hanging from the clock.
Oh yeah. Dan Rather.
Dan Rather, yeah.
Right.
So I had like a whole like like, a bunch of the work to show people like, hey, this is what I want to do. This is what I am doing. So it goes back all the way to then. Yeah, it's just, so anyways, it's awesome to be able to talk to you. And, I mean, I only get to see you maybe once a year if I go to that party in New York.
Yeah, exactly.
So it's cool to finally talk a little bit,
Yeah.
Even though it has to be
during this whole virus thing, I'm kind of getting used to these, these conference calls and doing everything else. It's a new world to me. I'm just like, okay, got to get used to it.
Yeah, it's weird. It is kind of funny because obviously I started doing this podcast way before all this started happening, and now I'm just seeing all these like people like, oh man, there's tons of people doing podcasts the way I do it now. Like, oh wait, no, they're not doing podcasts. They're just talking to grandma and posting it online. Yeah, right. It's a little bit different, but how have you been throughout all this craziness?
I've been good. Yeah, I mean, everything. When it comes to me talking to people with normal jobs, I'm always like, I've been self-quarantining for 35 years.
Exactly.
That's what an artist does. I mean, I spend most of the time by myself in my studio, so it's been fairly easy on me compared to what a lot of people have to go through. So I'm not going to complain.
Yeah.
But but it screws up your life. It screws up my my hockey schedule. I'm used to playing ice hockey all the time.
Oh wow.
And, I just got back to it within the last couple of weeks, and I'm like, oh, thank God I can breathe again. So.
Oh, that's awesome.
Good. Everybody's healthy here, so.
Yeah, that's good.
Everything's good with you?
Yeah, pretty good. I mean, it's the same kind of thing. It's the same thing that you said. Like I'm used to just being in my studio all the time anyways, so it's not that weird for me. I think it's weirder for my kids. Just feel like they're just stuck.
How old?
My oldest is almost 17, and then I've got a 13-year-old, a 2.5-year-old, almost 3-year-old, and a 6-week-old.
Hey, congratulations! I didn't know that.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, we had a quarantine baby. So yeah, 4 daughters.
Populate the world just yet.
Yeah. No, that's been a weird adjustment trying to get used to. Like for example, we want to go to Wisconsin next weekend to I want to visit my brother and family and everything, and now our mayor is saying nobody can go to Wisconsin, or if you do, you have to be self-quarantined for 2 weeks. It's like, oh man, it's like you can't get a break around here.
Yeah, I have family up in Maine, same thing. I'm like, they're not going to let us in the state for same thing. It's like, wow, I guess I'm not going to see family for a while.
Yeah, it's crazy. It's really crazy because I guess it keeps changing though. Like I mean, I was looking at like, can we go? But we just, because I know we're only going to see them. We're not going anywhere else. We're going to they live in the middle of nowhere in the woods in Wisconsin. But then when you come back, then you're supposed to self-quarantine. But then I'm thinking, will they even allow you to, like, do they have border patrol? Like,
right.
I don't know what's going on. So I don't know. Not that I'm not taking it seriously. I just really want to go fishing, I want to get out of here and go fishing. But so how's stuff with work been going with all this stuff?
Our work's been good. I had a bunch of jobs canceled. In the beginning, I was doing some things for some golf tournaments. And obviously those went right off the board.
Oh man, yeah.
So it definitely slowed down, but I mean, I took the time to do a lot more things that were self-generated. I took some private commissions. Just did some things to stay busy. So.
Yeah, same. Yeah, we're actually both working on a job with the same client right now, which is kind of interesting. That's been a weird one because I don't know about you, but I mean I'm doing 2 of them, and the one I'm basically going to try to finish next week. I think I can do it in 1 week, but the first one I'm doing, it's been, I don't know if you found this with this particular job, like not really sure exactly what they want exactly. So I'm kind of I feel like I figured it out now, but
right. Well, third art direction, just speaking professionally, at first they wanted Luciano Pavarotti. Yeah. So I spent a couple of days really trying to get his likeness down to a T. Yeah. And after they saw the sketch, they were like, oh yeah, but it can't actually be him. It just has to look like him. because we're going to worry about copyright law. And I'm like, well, you should have told me that like days ago.
Yeah.
But,
Yep. I've been dealing with the same thing. I did a job years ago where a client told me they wanted an angel that looked like Owen Wilson. And I thought, oh, that's kind of perfect, actually. Like the golden kind of hair. And
right.
I could see like a ditzy, dumb looking angel. That makes sense. And then I basically, I didn't look like him. I did enough to it to make it not look like him. Like, basically, if you looked at it, you would have been like, oh, that's a terrible caricature, Jason. Like, that's not, I can tell who you're trying to draw, but that's not, but it didn't look like him. And they were still like, oh, this is great, but it looks too much like Owen Wilson. And I'm like, you guys, like, okay. So I started messing with it more. Like, maybe I'll make his eyes further apart, or maybe I'll do what, and no matter what I did, it still looked like Owen Wilson.
That's a tough thing to do,
like,
too. But it's like, yeah. So I know doing faces for all the years, it's like, once you get into it, you can't start shoving things around, or it just looks, it looks like bad plastic surgery after a while.
Yeah, it's weird. How did you end up getting into the caricature realm of things with illustration? Because I mean, when you're, and I guess what I want to get at with that is that you're like a fine artist oil painter. You do like these amazing oil paintings. And when I was first getting started at this, I didn't really know that caricature could be that, I always thought of it as just the Mad Magazine kind of cartoony stuff.
Where I learned all my stuff was Mad
Magazine. Exactly. So is that kind of like a direction that you wanted to do, or did you ended up happening that way?
When I was in art school in New York City, in School of Visual Arts, and Brad Howland gave a talk, and I think I'm in my junior year, and he's giving a talk about what's it like to be an illustrator, and his number one message was, you have to have a very distinct style. People need to look at your work and know who it is. Bet. And I'm thinking, well, I'm screwed. I'm like, all I was doing at the time was realism, and not really very good realism. I'm not that great of a painter. So I literally spent weeks trying to figure out what I was going to do. And then I started realizing when I was having fun in my sketchbooks, everything was caricatures, everything was goofy, everything was out of the realm. It would all look like Mort Drucker, Jack Davis stuff. But meanwhile, I was trying to be a fine artist. So I thought, well, what if I combine them? What if I started painting realistically onto my caricatures? And that's when, boom, it just hit me. People at my school, like, the teacher, everybody noticed it right away.
Mm-hmm.
And it was just a stroke of good luck, really. I mean, by the time I was in school, I had art directors go, I saw this piece over here in this magazine, and I knew it was yours. So I was like, all right, mission accomplished. I knew I set out to do it, and that was it. So it was something that I tried very hard to invent.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. So that was it's interesting because I always wondered that with there's not very many of us that are caricature illustrators. You know what I mean? Like, I think that used to be way more, but there's a smaller amount that are actually painters and like painting things. So I always wonder like the direction or how someone ended up that way. Because for me, it was I just started drawing characters when I was a little kid, and it just kept. The more I grew and the more I matured, the more I wanted to, I think you're obviously you're familiar with Sebastian Kruger's work.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
So basically, originally I thought I invented caricature. Like I was like very proud of myself because I was just drawing all the time, drawing people funny and everything. And then, then my dad bought me Len Redmond's book on caricature, and that's when I found out. I'm like, oh, this is a thing. And then I started getting into Mad Magazine. I started realizing, oh, this is a real thing that a lot of people do. And then years later, when I was like in, I guess, middle school, no, I think I was in high school, early high school. I was like, okay, I want to try to do these realistic, like render them as realistic as I can. And so I was starting to try to figure that out. And then my dad bought me Sebastian's, I think it was just called Stars, I think. And yeah, it's just called Stars. And I remember that it pissed me off because it was so good,
Yeah.
but it was like it was exactly what I was imagining in my mind, but someone had already been doing it and for a long time and is really, really good at it.
Right.
So yeah, it was one of those things where, do I keep doing this? Someone else is already doing it. Really awesome. So, but it's interesting because I mean, I didn't realize when I first was getting into it that I could even do it as a career. Was that something that you felt like right away when you figured that out in college, that, you know, magazines could use this kind of stuff, you know?
Yeah, but I wasn't positive. You know, it was one of those things where I just tried to have that belief where, well, if I like it and if I find it looks cool, somebody's going to want this. But yeah, when I first started out, I used to constantly get rejected from magazines and places I would go, and they would say exactly that. They go, "Look, this is really cool. I just have no idea what to do with it." You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And because people weren't really using that stuff back when I started. But I was very lucky because I felt like pretty soon after college, after about 2-3 years, it started to be a thing, and people really wanted it. And so I got just great jobs, you know, at that point in my career where I was working for people on Broadway doing, they would do mock posters for the, you know, for the plays. And I'm thinking, wow, you're going to use like a caricature artist like me for this. And so anything that had humor in it, I was the guy. So it was a lot of fun.
That is pretty awesome. Yeah, I do. I do remember a lot of your early Mad covers that you did as well. I always really liked the thing I really liked about your work too is that not only was it humorous, but you made it look cool. Like there's that one Mad cover. I think he's snowboarding, right? That's yours.
Oh,
where he's
right.
like, but like the way you did like the perspective and the sort almost like a fisheye lens type thing. I remember like stuff like that. I'm like, that is like so cool. It looks awesome. Like, when did you start messing with that? Like, there's that. Here's the other thing about your work is, I mean, when I think of your work, I think, of course, you push color really well. You got some really good exaggerations and that sort of a thing. But you also do the blur thing. That's like the James Bennett blur. It's like there's always something out of focus, and there's like it adds like a nice atmosphere. When did that start coming? Because that's definitely a signature look, I think.
You know, again, it was really done on purpose. I mean, I did the same thing you did when I was looking at other caricature artists. You know, I'm looking at all our contemporaries, and they're putting things in the Society of Illustrators, and I'm looking at them going like, how am I supposed to, you know, separate myself from this? That was always in my mind. How do I separate it? And I realized that I had an advantage working in oils where I could do that. I'm thinking I can show any photographic, you know, toy that I want. And I'm a big fan of photographs, you know, old photographs from like 20s and the 30s.
Yeah.
And all kinds of stuff like that. And when I would really study those old photos, that's when you see the blur. And that's when you see, you know, that the limited focus and all that, because, you know, the cameras weren't that good. So you'd have some fascinating things in the background. So that was when I started really getting into that blurred effect, going like, well, how much more can I look like an old time photograph? And I had fun with it. I still have fun with it. It actually helps me be looser now as a painter, because I think the biggest problem I had when I first started was that I looked like an airbrush artist, and it was almost like too tight, too damn tight.
Yeah.
And so playing with the out of focus has really helped me, you know, not be afraid to show brush strokes once in a while.
Yeah. I mean, it's funny because the job that we're both working for right now, I've definitely got some James Bennett things going on in that one now. Cause like, you know, they want quite a bit in the image. And I was like, I am not going to paint all that stuff. That's crazy. So I basically, the whole background is all out of focus.
Right.
But it's kind of cool because it makes the guy just pop, you know?
Right. Yeah.
But that's a fun way. I mean, and here's the thing too. I mean, for me, this brings me to a question just about your technique a little bit, if you don't mind. But like,
sure.
I used to do traditional work for publication. Now I do traditional work just for myself or for like private commission. And the reason I do that is because the deadlines are crazy. And I don't think they pay enough for me to do traditional work. I can't justify. I'm not very fast when it comes to oils. I think when I start painting with oils, I start to just enjoy it way too much to rush anything. I want it to be like, I don't know. It's more of a relaxing thing for me. Where when I think about illustration, it's always a little bit stressful with the deadlines and everything. And so I eliminated as much of the stress as possible by working digitally, but able to still kind of work in my style. And deadlines are still crazy and still tight. And so how in the world do you do this still with oils? I mean, you probably have a nice camera setup, I imagine, but still, it's crazy.
Yeah, it is crazy. I have clients that ask me that all the time. Like even now, they hire so much digital work now that they kind of go like, "You work traditionally? You still work with us?" Yeah. And of course, it's easier now because now when I finish a painting, I can just throw it on my scanner, completely wet, and and it's gone. It's delivered on time. Back in the day when I had to deliver it, painting. In fact, I go back far enough where I actually had to hand them the painting in their office in New York, and they had to be dried. So I basically paint thin, and I use a lot of crystal clear and blow dryers, and I can dry anything. So that was always my trick. There was another thing I learned from Brad Holland, because he gave a demonstration when I was in school, and he was showing that. He was throwing things around. Well, I think you just froze on me. Is everything all right?
I'm here. Yeah. Is it still frozen?
Oh, okay. I think you're coming back. Right. So it's just a lot of techniques to figure it out. When I worked for Time Magazine, I started working in acrylics as an underpainting, and then I would just do oil washes on top of that.
See, so you have a scanner that actually you can scan an oil painting when it's wet. But you must be. I mean, how big is the scanner?
It's like an 11 by 17.
Oh, okay. So you can scan, but you said, do you have to scan in pieces and put it together, or?
Well, generally I try not to work larger than 11 by 17 as far as the image. Unless it's usually if I'm working bigger than that, it's for a bigger cause, or it's for a commission. It's not really something that they're going to print in a magazine or something like that. So
yeah.
Yes, yeah, so I small.
And do you ever work? So the fact that a lot of art directors are used to working with, digital artists, do they sometimes not realize that you're not working digitally, and they say, "Hey, can you just move this over here?" Yes. Or because that happens to me all the time, and I'm working digitally and I get pissed off because I'm like, dude, I spent hours painting that. They do that. And then,
without a doubt. Yeah. I mean, I just think, again, I sound like such an old timer, but yeah, I think that just with the age group where, they don't realize, I always complain to other illustrators like you, and I'll say, they don't appreciate what it means when they approve a sketch. Once you approve, that's it. Don't move the house to the other side of the building. It's like, you can't do that,
So that is.
I try to explain that, yes, but my process is it's like building a house. It's not, I'm not sliding things. There's a foundation. I can't.
Dude, that is so infuriating. When I agree with you 100%. If you approve a sketch, you stay out of the kitchen, because it's so frustrating. You put so much time into it. Yeah. And what I can't stand working digitally is because they know I'm working digitally, they think, oh, just change this and change that, and it's no problem. And it's like, well, first of all, it's destroying everything that I had already focused on.
Yeah.
And yeah, maybe I shouldn't be married to my work so much. I should be able to change things. I get it. It's for you and your business and whatever. That's fine. But at the same time, it's like, you're fucking with my mind here. I put so much of everything in this. You proved it. I spent days maybe, and then they're like, "Oh, let's just completely have a different expression." Or, it drives me crazy. I can't imagine, working in the oils and that kind of stuff happens with these deadlines. I mean, I did some oil commissions a while ago, and it was happening with this, where, I spent at least 16, 17 hours or so painting this one part of the painting, and then all of a sudden they want it completely changed. It's like, well, what are you talking about? That's not how this works.
Yeah.
It's
like somebody saying they want you to give up your kid. It's like no.
Yeah. Oh man. Yeah, I mean, how much time do you normally need for like an illustration for publication?
It really depends. I mean, people ask me all the time. It really depends. If it's like a portrait with no background, or like, just a plain type of background.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, afternoon, that's not bad at all. If you throw a full body with hands in there, then it's a few days. And then if it's a scene of a few people in a setting, that's a couple of weeks at the very least. Yeah, it really does. It does change. I mean, I've always enjoyed the deadlines, quite honestly. I think I found that out as I've gotten older, is that I'm mentally ill because I love that stuff. Like my favorite was for Time Magazine. And I mean, I'm not sure if you get a chance to work with them, but
yeah,
this was back in the day, and they would call me on a Wednesday. They would approve the sketch on a Thursday, and then they'd come and pick up the painting from my studio on a Friday morning, and then the thing's published by Monday morning.
Yeah,
and it was like somebody holding a gun to your head, going, "All right, let's see if you can do this." And loved it. I mean, I realized I was kind of addicted to that adrenaline, where I'm like, it's like, name that tune in 3 notes. Yeah, I can do that.
Yeah. No, I know exactly what you're talking about. I enjoy, I don't like it when someone says, "Hey, we don't need this for a couple months." That is kind of like, oh man, I don't know what to do with that, because I'm normally used to, a few days. And I know you've done like weekly standard covers and different things. I never got more than a day and a half to 2 days to do a cover. And I always, when I saw something like recently, Chris Payne did I think it was a Washington Examiner cover, and I've done a bunch of those for them, and I only get like a day and a half or so, and it's crazy, and I'm working digitally, and I'm just like freaking out, and all of a sudden Chris Payne comes out with one of his pieces, and I called the art director. I was like, "How much time did you give him? That's not cool, man." It's like, come on, like. But that's why I'm always curious, because I see, I see like certain illustrators that have done pieces for Rolling Stone, and they're working in oil, and they have like this real intricate oil painting, and they've give one of my paintings for them. They only give me 1 day to do, and so I think sometimes like you kind of shoot yourself in the foot a little bit if if you start getting a reputation of how quick you can work.
Oh, you're right about that.
Yeah, because for me, I'm just like, hey, I'm just trying to keep the lights on and stuff. So yeah, give me the work, but also have some goddamn respect. I'm a person. I'm a person with feelings. Damn it.
Well, I've done some deadlines. It's funny sometimes when people ask me like, oh, what's one of your favorite paintings that you've done? And a lot of times I'll go, well, wait, do you mean a finished painting, or what am I most proud of? Because I would love to point to some of the things that I've done that were like incredibly detailed, and I did it in like no time.
Yeah.
And I actually delivered, and I got paid, and I was like that's what I'm proud of, right?
Yeah. Yep. Yeah. I agree with. I remember one of my first pieces of yours. I don't know if it was one of the first ones, but it's one I remember. It's like a kid in a swimming pool, and he's like shooting a gun or something, and I think it was at Society of Illustrators, and I was surprised how small it was. Yeah, right. I'm not 100%, but are you painting mostly on board, like gessoed board?
Yeah. Unless sometimes when I do something larger, or if I know it's going to be in a museum, I paint on wood. But most of the time, 95% of the time, it's just illustration board.
Oh, okay. Because I remember just like the real, like even the piece behind you looks like so smooth. It's like you have like a real smooth surface. But you paint really thin. You said like You still, or is that just?
I'd say generally, yeah. I mean, I'd say compared to other oil painters, who love to lather it on. I basically paint pretty thin. Um, I, I've probably changed over the years, quite honestly. I probably paint a lot thicker now than I used to. But
Yeah.
yeah, I used to have to make sure it was thin enough so that it would dry.
Yeah, that's funny. It's so interesting. It's such a different mindset for, I mean, obviously, like I tried to think about, what I do as an artist. It doesn't matter what medium. I'm just being an artist and I'm painting.
Mm-hmm.
But like, it's another thing to be an oil painter and to have, learn. There's so many techniques with oil painting, so many different approaches,
Yeah.
but to actually have to almost adapt or evolve your technique to basically adhere to the fact that you have no time, that the news cycle is changing and all these different things. And it's like, okay, now how do I take this oil painting technique that people have been mastering for thousands of years and have to somehow figure out how to simplify it? And like, I've done things like I started, even for like private commissions, I've done oils. I'll use, gosh, what's that stuff called? Liquid. Yes. And that stuff works really well.
Oh, it's just, I swear by that stuff.
Yeah. But then this is what I was going to say is then I was talking with Roberto Prada about it, and he's just like, don't ever use that stuff. It'll kill you. Cause he almost died. He had like a terrible, experience. And yeah. And, so it's just interesting, but it's like, but it works so well. Because you're thinking about these deadlines and stuff. But, I just can't imagine, like, it's a illustration is a weird profession, especially now. Like it goes up and down, and like sometimes it's like super slow, and then it comes in heavy. And we have to think about all these different aspects of it. But it was interesting what you're saying about how I also agree with you that it's exciting in a way, that adrenaline rush. And I remember when I was doing the Time, I did the Pope for Time, and the funniest thing about that job was, for me, was I was so excited about it, and I couldn't believe I was working for Time and everything. And even though I didn't have as much time as I wanted, or I could have used for the cover, it was one of those things where every day I was working on it, I was just so excited. I was so pumped because I'm doing this thing for Time. And I remember the day before, it was my last day working on it. I ran across the street to the grocery store. We had this Jewel Osco grocery store. Grabbed something real quick to get for lunch. And I came back, finished the job, handed it in. The next day they announced it and everything. And I go back to Jewel, the grocery store, and it's on the stands. Like,
that's wild.
And I was like, dude, just yesterday I was still doing those final touches, and it's here. It's everywhere in the grocery store. It's a really trippy thing, Yeah, it's like, really. It's like, does this happen? Like, it's things like that where you start believing those weirdos that think we're in a simulation. Like, I don't know, man. It doesn't seem right.
Yeah, I mean, to me, that's the stuff I loved about becoming an illustrator. I mean, it was that, it was that gratification of, damn, I'm just some guy who was sitting in my own studio doing this thing, like you said. And I'm highlighting the nose, and maybe I'll put a little more red in the mustache. And like you said, in a couple of days, you're looking at it on the newsstand. You're looking at it on the side of a bus station. Like, it's like, what? It's very odd.
It's really weird. One of my favorite things was when that happened was I was going to New York for the American Illustration Show, and the day before I was supposed to leave, the New York Observer called me and said, could you do a cover for us real quick? And I was like, well, I'm actually leaving. I'm leaving tonight to go to New York. And so I can't do it. And they go, oh, it's just like a portrait of Sting, like a head shoulder thing. It's super. And I was like, I was like, if I could do it in just a couple hours. And they're like, yeah, it doesn't have to be this or that, whatever. I was like, okay, whatever I can do in a couple hours, I can do it for you. So I just banged out this Sting. And then the next day, my wife and I are walking around New York. I mean, it was the weirdest thing. I ran by this stand, and I'm like, no way. It's like literally right there. And it's like the trippiest thing ever. And I remember just holding it up, and taking pictures with it. Like, this is so weird, man. But yeah, it's very strange, and it's one of those things. I think as an illustrator, it's like I had to get used to was the we need it yesterday kind of a mentality.
Right.
Do you still deal with that? Like I know like you enjoy the adrenaline a little bit of that, but do you feel the stress ever? Where like, oh geez, like.
Yeah, I'm feeling it right now. I'm trying to bang out that job we're working on now, where I'm like, okay, there's a lot of layers to it. There's a product.
Yeah.
There's caricature, and then I've got to paint this sandwich. And I'm like, damn man, I don't paint sandwiches. So, so as I'm doing it, I'm like, all right, I'm giving it to him tomorrow, and I know it's going to get done. There's one thing I can always do is just go, well, as long as no one kidnaps me from my studio, it'll get done.
Yeah.
It'll look as good as I want it to look. So we'll
yeah.
see.
Yeah. I mean, do you ever have to Photoshop anything? Do you ever do that at all? Like if you scan it in, and do you ever have to like do any editing, or is it just how it is?
No, it's basically how it is. I pretty much live with whatever I can do in the paint. And if somebody wants little changes, it's oils. It's easy to change, unless, like we said before, as long as they're not moving things around, if they want to highlight something or change the color, that's usually not a big deal.
Oh, I don't know, man. That drives me crazy. Like I still to this day have the hardest time. I don't have a scanner. I mean, I haven't used a scanner in so many years. It's crazy. Yeah. Like, man, at least 10 years or more. I haven't used the scanner, but
well,
like,
what do you do with your work when it's done?
With oils and stuff?
Or with even, well, I guess digital, that's a stupid question, but if you work on, what do you do when it's done? You get,
if it's I usually just take photos with I have a camera. But I can never, that's one thing that drives me crazy. I can never get a photo that's good enough that actually represents how the painting really looks.
Right.
It's so frustrating because I'm thinking, man, this is looking really good. I'm stoked about this. If you could only see it in person, and the client wants me to send pictures, and I feel like I'm apologizing in the pictures. Like, this doesn't really quite look like it. And, that I never have figured that out, that, I know like some guys like Tim O'Brien and stuff, I have like whole camera set up. I think Fred Harper showed me he's got like a whole thing set up. I haven't figured that part of it yet. So if it's a painting that I really, really want to like have a solid record of it, I would take it to like a place and get it professionally photographed.
Right.
But I think I remember talking with you one time where you were saying that you have to actually have a storage unit just for all your paintings or something like that. Was that you?
No.
I can't remember.
Like stagger through my computer. I used to get transparencies made back in the day, back in the 80s and 90s, and it always cost a little fortune, to do it. They'd make slides.
Oh, I remember that.
But yeah, once they came out with the scanners, I've been doing that for a long time now, and it's just so easy, it's so simple, and they all just sit in files on my computer somewhere, and I try to back up my computer every once in a while.
No, what I meant though was like your originals though. Like I think you were telling me once your originals that you have.
Original stories is that. Yeah, I moved here about 4 years ago, and for an artist to move, I must have hundreds of paintings, and I get the worst ones and I toss them in the trash because I just don't want to.
Yeah,
and when people want them, I just send them to them. I love trading with other artists because, there's only so many you can frame. I still have closets full of framed paintings with nowhere to put them. So, just when you've been doing it a long time, it's crazy the amount of physical paintings that you actually have in your possession. It's crazy.
Yeah. Yeah. That's another funny thing is that I've gotten that before from people who like I just can't justify doing traditional work for publication. But I always get artists to say, "Well, dude, you can just sell the originals then." Really? Like, who wants to buy a Donald Trump caricature or like whatever it is? It's like I don't think so.
Yeah, I mean, it's rare when I wouldn't say it's rare, but yeah, it's kind of funny the things that people will buy. Everything I did for Mad, I think I've sold everything.
Oh yeah.
One or two. I mean, because there's collectors for that. But other than that, it's always interesting to me when somebody will contact me and go, "Oh yeah, you know that George Bush you did? I really want to. Is that available for sale?" And I'm like, "Of course."
That's funny.
Why I want to keep a George Bush painting around my studio.
Yeah, it's framed above my bed.
Yeah, sure.
That's funny. I remember that Mad cover you did with George Bush and Al Gore.
Oh right.
Wasn't it 2 covers? Yeah, it's 2 covers.
Yeah, talk about fast deadlines and a lot of work. Yeah, that was like, yeah, we need 2 covers, and yeah, we got about a week, and I'm like, oh god.
Dude, it's really funny. Mad Magazine is one of those jobs that is always like my childhood dream to do Mad Magazine.
Yep.
And it's just funny to think about it because every single, like the first time I got a job for Mad, I was so excited. I couldn't believe I'm working for Mad. And it's just funny. This is like inside baseball. And it doesn't matter because I don't really care. Mad's not really around anymore. It doesn't matter. But I remember being how shocked how low the pay was for Mad Magazine because I was expecting like this in my mind, working for Mad Magazine was like the epitome of you made it as an illustrator. Meanwhile, not realizing that other illustrators actually kind of think it's a joke, in a way. I found that out later, but I'm still excited about it. God damn it. But I remember just being like, oh.
I was always really excited about it. I mean, again,
yeah.
it was one of those magazines where I'm like, damn, I remember being like 11, 12 years old, looking at this magazine going, maybe, someday. And now I'm like doing covers for them and I'm thinking like, well, holy hell, what happened?
Yeah. And that's what I was going to say is like, you kind of, cause I remember like my wife just being like kind of frustrated because I was putting so much time and work into it, but not getting paid very much. And she couldn't understand that. She's like, what are you doing? Like, this is not making any sense for us financially and everything. But I was like, you don't understand. It's Mad Magazine. And so every single time I worked for them, I had to deal with that, like, that kind of trying to justify it. But to me, it was always worth it because it was Mad Magazine. You know what I mean? Like,
oh, absolutely.
It's still one of those, I feel, I wish it was still going on and I would still work for them. I would still do it. But it's one of those things where it's like, it's something about that childhood dream that you focused on and it's kind of
like you've made your parents proud of you. It's like, yes. Now I finally have made little Jim happy that, I'm an artist because I'm working in the same class as Mort Drucker, And
exactly. Like the fact that, like for the fact that I can say that I'm a part of the Usual Gang of Idiots, and I'm in that group of like what you said, Drucker, Jack Davis, Tom Richmond, C.F. Payne, Roberto Prado, Richard Williams, Norma Mingo, on and on and on. It's like that's like a awesome like crew to be a part of,
Oh, it is. Especially now I'm getting older. You start putting together that that mental list of the people that you've worked for and the people that you've gotten compliments from in your life, and it's like when I met Mort Drucker and he complimented my work and knew my work, like I was like, that's it, I'm done. Thank you very much.
That's awesome, man. That's so cool. That's what I was gonna ask you next. What's one of your big clients or something that you did that like besides Mad that you're like, oh my gosh, I can't believe I'm working for these people or that I get to do this? Do you still have anything like that where that happens?
I do, but it's kind of funny now. Like just just a couple of weeks ago, I had a couple of paintings that were accepted into the Negro Leagues Museum.
Oh, wow.
And like, that's the kind of stuff that really blows my mind, where I just go, it's wild that you start out screwing around doing goofy stuff.
Yeah.
And now I've probably got a couple paintings that are going to be hanging on the wall of this place for years and years and years. So whenever I get stuff that are in museums, like I have another piece that's in the Cooperstown Hall of Fame, and I have like a lifetime pass to go there. And it's
That's awesome.
only one little painting that I did for Time Magazine back in the day of Ken Griffey Jr. and Mark McGuire. And they're like scaling Roger Maris's face. One of my best ideas. And, when I think that these things are in these museums, they're just going to stay there forever and ever and ever, as far as I know, unless another virus wipes us out. Yeah, that's the kind of stuff I'm really most proud of.
Yeah, that's awesome, man. That's really cool. Are you, I wanted to ask you another question before I want to show you some fan art at some point here, but the painting behind you I keep thinking about, there's one of the things I like about your work. There's a lot of your work that you do group, lot of characters, a lot of different, room perspective and everything. And I was wondering what your kind of process is to setting that up. So like when it comes to the idea of, like the piece behind you, for example, I'm assuming you'd kind of work how I would work, in a way where you gather as much references as possible. But what's the process of the starting point with that, from taking to the point where you're ready to paint it?
Yeah, for the one behind me, I mean, that was different. It was probably about at the really height of my career, and I wanted to just do something for my game room to hang next to my pool table. And I thought, and I'd never really done this before. I'd been banging away as a traditional illustrator, piece by piece, week by week, like talking about before, banging it out. This was the first piece I just went, I'm going to do something big. I'm going to do it epic, and I'm going to take my damn time with it. So yeah. I've done pieces like this since then. And I used to try to do one a year for a long time. I still do. But this was a new one to me. But to answer your question, as I set it up, I basically set it up the main character, which is easy in a piece like this, as you can see, because there's one main character. Yeah. And then start building behind it. And I know that I don't have to do one whole sketch for the entire thing. If you looked at the sketch for this, it was really just circles where people were going to be.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
So once I had the first guy established, then I can go in and do the people piece by piece, if I can find some interesting faces. Half the guys in there are me posing.
Yeah.
As you can see, most people, everybody in this painting is scratching, because the painting is called Scratch. So if you look really close, you can see
that's funny.
Somebody's scratching something. So it took me a long time to get those people. But to answer your question in a long-winded way, that's basically it. For a large piece with a lot of people, I'm building it as I go along, as long as I know where.
Yeah, I always feel like the tricky thing is when you're doing group pieces like that is to because as you know, we especially with quick deadlines, you have to just get as much reference as possible. And one of the hardest things is making the reference all work together, because like, for example, the piece that I'm working on right now for this job that we're both doing, I got this guy on a horse, and the references I got of the guy are not very good. The lighting is terrible. And I found this cool picture of a horse, but not the greatest resolution. And so I'm basically having to just make everything up and just, well, if the lighting is hitting the horse this way, and I like the way that it's hitting, I got to make it hit the guy that way. So I have to invent that, because I don't have good reference. And
I think that's the toughest thing of an illustrator's job, really, quite honestly. I mean, I go to students all the time. It's a matter of, really finding good reference and really knowing what it is you want to do with it. Yeah. And like you said, most of the time, the lighting is horrible. The whatever angle that they're shooting the person at is not good. And doing caricatures of people, it's basically the same thing. I mean, I could look at a page of Google reference of, say, Tom Hanks, and 95% of them are unusable. You know, it's like,
exactly. Yep.
it is, but it's a horrible picture, you know, and and sometimes it's that preparation where I spend more time, you know, looking for the right angles, the right things, and even if the light's not perfect, you know, you can kind of fudge it. You know, you can kind of use. A lot of times what I did when I was younger is I would, you know, form a person's caricature, but then take the lighting from somebody else.
Yeah.
And sometimes that works, sometimes doesn't, you know, but it's that never ending search, you know, to know really is what it is you want to do. And I think that's really the whole key. Then it's just a matter of time and spending how many hours. And, you know, I actually look through books instead of Google now, you know, or I used to look through more books. Google's pretty good, but it's also pretty crappy, you know, so.
Yeah, it can be hard.
Yeah, like I have a much better time finding amazing pictures out of books and magazines that I've saved, which there's a lot more interesting stuff there than the horrible lighting that I find on Google.
Yeah. I mean, I mostly I'll just take pictures and set up a light to get the best kind of
That's the best
thing. I had to do a portrait recently for a magazine cover, and it was two women for a grocery store magazine. That's the weirdest thing. I didn't even know that grocery stores had a magazine, but
yeah,
it was Progressive Grocer is what it was called. And but the references were not very good, but they had these two portraits that they wanted me to do, and they wanted me to do like their own, like a little bit more than half their body. I had to make up the bodies, so I just found references of business women. I was like, okay, these bodies I think will work, and I had to kind of, you know, draw them so that fit better. But it's realistic portrait, so it's not like I can't get away with certain things I could get away with caricaturing.
Right. Yeah.
The hardest part is the one woman's face was perfect lighting, and I'm like, okay, I'm gonna basically take her lighting and have to paint the other woman with the same lighting. That was like really weird because sometimes it can mess. I don't know exactly how that woman's face is gonna work.
Right.
You know, so you kind of, I don't know, that's always tricky. I think with caricature, I feel like I can get away with a little bit more.
Absolutely.
But when I have to do that with portraits, it's sort of frustrating. Like, no. But I have a lot of photos of me and my wife and friends of mine that are the weirdest photos ever, because I just get, hey, can you come and pose for me? And I've gone to, have you ever done this? I've gone to like costume stores. In Chicago, we've got some great costume stores.
Really? I've never done that.
I've done it before, like for specific jobs. It's like, oh man, they need like a pirate character or something. And you can find some references online, but if you go to the costume store, they have like the white blouses and all this stuff. I'm like, man. So I would just go and like rent it for a few bucks and get the good reference.
Yeah, see, that's like NC Wyeth and Norman Rockwell. That's what those guys used to do, you know.
Yeah.
Old classic illustrators, you know, they would set up these photo shoots, you know, and I'm like, damn, how much time did they have to do a painting if they had all the time to like go to the store and buy costumes and hire models? It's like I don't know, I didn't get those kind of deadlines. Yeah,
mine's whenever I've done that, it's mostly been spontaneous, where it's like, you know, it's more like, oh, I wonder, like right now, again, with this job that I'm working on, one of the things the guy wants is he wants horseradish plant, like the root and everything, in the background, like as if they're cactuses. And first of all, if you look up horseradishes on Google, I'm shocked how little good references there are of it. Right. So I'm my last Hail Mary is, because the references I've found are terrible. I don't know what I'm going to do. I haven't painted that part of it yet, and he needs the final tomorrow. So I'm going to go to a couple of local grocery stores and just see if I can find this freaking plant, and then just take photos with my phone just to see what it looks like. Because I don't, you know.
Yeah. I've always said, if you can take your own photos, those are the best. I mean, there's just always, I've done it for years for my hands. You know?
Yeah.
A lot of times, I'm always the best model I can possibly use, because I don't care how much I screw myself up, and I can take it with the right light that I want. That to me is more important than anything. So
That's hilarious. I don't know if you've experienced this too, because I think we as artists, we know in our mind exactly what we need and what we want, what we're thinking of.
mm-hmm.
And there's so many times where like my sweet wife is so kind to like get into a costume for me or something. And then I end up getting so frustrated because she's not posing the way no, it needs to look more natural and like this, like that, and then she can't do it. And then I get frustrated and I'm like, oh, then I put on the dress. Now I'm doing it. I'm like, oh, okay.
Yeah, I used my two sons for many years. From the time they were babies until just recently. Now, they're in their 20s now, and my oldest son was the best model. Like, he was 2 years old, and I'm doing this cough drop billboard somewhere in Canada. So I'm asking my 2-year-old, here, pretend like you're coughing, and he would do it like spot on. I was like the most proudest illustrator parent ever. I was like, oh, this kid's great. So then my younger son, who's 2 years younger than him, when he was born, I got a chance to do this children's book with Carl Reiner. And so I told Carl Reiner, I said, my youngest son looks just like you as a little kid. Let's use him. So I've got a whole 30 illustration children's book to paint. My younger son could not pose to save his life. I put his arm up in the air and he couldn't do that. Like, I would tell him to make a face. He wouldn't make the face. I was the most frustrating. I was like, oh my God, I'm going to screw up this entire children's book because my son doesn't know how to pose.
That's hilarious. That's really funny, man. I had, that reminds me, I've got a fan question for you that I'll play for you in just a sec. That has to do with some of your books you've illustrated. But so years ago, I got to work on Alice in Wonderland, the Tim Burton's Alice in Wonderland. I got to work on some of the character designs,
Beautiful.
And but it was one of those things where I didn't have much time, and I got to work on the Tweedles, the creepy twins.
Oh, that's excellent. Oh, I saw those. They were great.
Yeah, thanks, man. I worked on them with Bobby Chu at schools, and we did a bunch of different designs. But at first, my whole idea was I thought, let's make them like little, like Nazi babies. Like that was my like Hansel and Gretel. Like I was thinking like kind of like creepy. Like give them like that 1930s haircut where it's shaved on the sides and they just look like little Hitler babies or something. And I like no eyebrows. But I used my daughter, who's the cutest little thing in the world. And I remember like having her pose for me to get to her. I wanted her to make fists. And so my idea was, I kind of made her, give daddy a mean face kind of a thing. And she just give me this face. So I used her for a lot of the reference for the Tweedles, just for expression and different things. And then one day, then I took her to a park and there's all these kids playing and these little kids walk by that were or they weren't twins, but you could tell they were brother and sister. So super pale, almost albino kids with like white hair. And I noticed something when I was like, it sounds creepy saying I was at a park staring at kids, but anyway, this kid was sitting there and I'm looking at this kid and I'm on my lunch break with my kid at the park, and they had all these translucent skin, so there's veins and like vessels you could see through their forehead, and I remember just staring at this kid going, man, that's too bad, because it was really kind of creepy, almost like something like the Emperor from Star Wars or something. And then I went back to my studio. I had to have the Tweedle design done basically by the end of the day, and I went and I just started painting like this translucent skin with the veins and everything, and added reference for my daughter. And what's really cool is when you watch the movie, if you see the movie, you'll see the Tweedles. They have those veins and all that.
That's so cool.
And it's just all for me going to a park and just seeing these creepy kids.
And that's the beauty of what we do, right? I mean, it's like you allow your real life experiences to influence something that you're working on. So I always tell students, I'm like, it's the greatest thing in the world,
Yeah, it's so cool.
You got something to say about the world you live in, and you can actually show that to people. I
Yeah.
just find it cool.
Oh, it's so cool. But yeah, like I said, I have a fan question for you.
Sure.
Questions from fans.
And this question is from Chad Fry.
Hi, Jason and James. Chad Fry here, fellow illustrator myself. James, I've been a fan for a while due to first discovering your work on the covers of the What If Mozart Wrote album series. I've since come to appreciate much more of your work, such as your stellar baseball paintings and your work in children's books, many of which reside in my personal library. You've illustrated several children's books by celebrities such as Jerry Seinfeld and Dawn Wells, but I believe you've done at least 4 books with the great Carl Reiner. I had the pleasure of meeting him several times over the years, but never worked on any of his projects. In light of his recent passing, I was wondering if you had any tales of interesting interactions you may have had with him stemming from illustrating his books. Thanks.
Oh my God, what a fantastic question.
Yeah, that was very well done. And
yeah, it really was. Thank you, Chad, for that question. Yes, I was very touched with Carl Reiner. I mean, I worked with him probably for about the last 15 years, and he's just an amazing guy. He's such an inspiration to me that you can grow old gracefully, still have your marbles, still be like incredibly talented, funny. When I would work with him over the years, my favorite stories is that just randomly he would call me at home in my studio and tell me dirty jokes. I mean, really, just dirty jokes.
That's great.
That was it. He had no point of anything else. But he was just an incredible guy to work with. And when I got a chance to go out to California, out to Beverly Hills, and meet him, I mean, he just could not have treated me and my girl any nicer. He got me. It was close to my birthday, which he knew. He bought me a birthday cake. We had sushi at his house, and he sang "Happy Birthday" to me. I mean, it was, and I'm sitting there in the kitchen going like, am I out of a movie? Like, what is happening here? Just really, and one of the most deeply genuine people you've ever met in your life. The last couple of books I worked with him were basically tributes to his family. He was deeply devoted to his family. Just a really great guy. I mean, I couldn't believe that he was as old as he was because he had so much energy.
That's awesome. What was it like working with Jerry Seinfeld?
Oh, that was maybe one of the most bizarre times in my career. He was another one, fantastic. It was like working with the guy right off the TV show. At the time, it was maybe a couple of years after his show had ended. And ironically, it was right after 9/11 hit. So to the point where when 9/11 hit, I'm thinking, oh, well, that book's dead. I'm not going back to New York anytime soon. But instead, we started back up again. And my best memories of that was, there's armed guards in his apartment building where he had an office at, which overlooked Central Park. And so I drive into New York, or I drove up to New York, took the ferry in by foot to get to his office. I would get to his building, and there'd be armed guards standing there with their rifles. And so Jerry would come down in the elevator by himself.
What's the deal with the guns?
It was like right out of one of his episodes. And it'd be like, okay, Jim, come on, get it. And then I'm standing in the elevator with Jerry, for the next 35 floors going like, yeah, it's a nice day, isn't it? Yep. But my favorite thing about that whole experience was, we were working pretty closely in that book for a while. And the script was already set, obviously, because it was taken from one of his stand-up routines. But he was an incredible worker. He would spend weeks figuring out whether there was going to be a comma or a period or how many words you would do it. He was crazy for stuff like that.
Yeah.
But my favorite thing was that do a little sketch with an idea of what the image would and to make him laugh. And he would laugh like a 10-year-old, like out wars, just like falling over laughter. And I'm sitting there thinking, I just made Jerry Seinfeld laugh. Like this is wild.
That's crazy.
Comedy, like crack up. And so that was the biggest kick I got out of that.
Wow, that's pretty awesome, man.
And
that's really cool.
The other thing was, my favorite thing was when we finished the book and we're doing a book signing, and we're up in We're up on 6th Avenue at the Barnes & Noble. People are lined up around the block to do this book signing. So to see the people come in, and I'm sitting next to them for hours, and these people will come in and go, Jerry, you're my favorite. I can't believe it. Some women will be crying, they'd be practically falling to their knees that they're meeting this icon of comedy. And I'm just sitting there quietly, signing the books with them. And every once in a while, about once out of every 200 people, somebody would walk up and go, oh my God, it's Jim Bennett. Jim Bennett's here. And I turn to Jerry and go, see, I got my fans too. So
Yeah, that would have been me. Like, hey, I'm like, whatever, Jerry Seinfeld, you hack, you. That's awesome, man.
Yeah, that was a wild experience.
I'll kick myself if I forget to ask you this before we go. I want to show you the fan art real quick too, but I wanted to ask you about your palette, just because one of the things I noticed about your work is it's very, very colorful, like very, I'm just wondering if there's like a set standard, like Jim Bennett type palette that you like to work with, or do you kind of just whatever you need for that particular piece?
Yeah, it depends on the piece. I was just doing, a lot of pieces for this baseball art museum, the National Pastime Museum out in San Francisco. And they gave me a list of baseball players that I had to do 50 of them, something like that, something crazy. And I would just do one a week. And of course, the players were from all different eras. They'd be from the 70s or, some current guy, or they'd be from 1925. So I basically based my palette on what year they were from. So, so
that's cool.
It was psychedelic. If it was 80s, it was bright, and as I went back in time, it got closer to, like the old
sepia
prints. Yeah. So I think a lot depends on what the job's for. I don't think I have that palette.
Yeah, I was just curious because one of the things I enjoy too is it's funny just talking to you and I was just talking to an artist last week about this. Like while I was talking to him, he was painting during our talk, but so I was seeing the side of his face the whole time. And so the entire time we're talking, I'm thinking about how he would draw his face and paint his face. So the same time I've been talking to you, I've been noticing the cool lighting coming from on the one side of your face, and the main part of your face is really warm. So I've been seeing like these, but I started realizing how interesting is it, because I've noticed that in your work a lot, where one thing that I think is cool about, doing caricature illustration, it's not just exaggerating the person, it's the color, like how much you can push, how the temperature or whatever it is, that can be something that can really, and there's something I noticed with your work is you do that a lot, like where like there'll be like a really nice, just cool meeting the warm, it's almost like a dramatic, I don't know. I see it with a lot of people, just even with me, like I'm just trying to do like a really good likeness and everything else. But sometimes I'll see work like what you've done, or like Mark Fredrickson does it a lot too. Just like really almost exaggerating that lighting.
Right.
And is that something that when you're, is that something that you decide in the sketch phase that you're going to push things like that? Or is it just something that just organically happens like while you're...
Yeah, I'd say it kind of organically happens. I mean, I think it just comes from just really having fun, with like, I that's the part about being an artist that I just love. I'll just lose myself.
Yeah.
I do a lot of baseball players, and I love to see how the light from their cap, like you've got on right there, where like how it's lining down around their face, and it describes the structure of their face, and you're going to get a different light, and it's just fascinating to me. I'll just tend to like focus on that stuff and just have a good time seeing what, how far I can push it.
Yeah, that's cool. You remember Ishmael Roldan, his work?
Oh, yeah.
That's one thing I learned from him early on was, oh wow, you can exaggerate color too, because I started pushing things a little bit more. He would do things like where he would have sort of a like if the person had sort of like more of like a red tone type face, he would give them like a green 5 o'clock shadow, or you know what I mean? Like he would make it like really green, and it was like that complementary color, but it would just pop. He would give guys like just totally blue or purple 5 o'clock shadows, but it worked. It really, there was something about it, and it wasn't just copying a photo.
Yeah, I think it's one of those reasons why when sometimes a younger artist will ask me, well, what do I use for flesh tones?
Yeah,
and I just go, there's no answer to that. You know what I mean? You can use anything for a flesh tone. It's a matter of what it's up against, and it's a matter of that. I mean, you can use anything anything the spectrum can be a flesh tone. So to me, that's why
you don't just go buy peach color.
It's like, those old Crayola crayons. Yeah, this is flesh tone. There you go. That's it.
Yeah, that is kind of funny. That's I was when I was in art school, people were like, what flesh color do you buy? And I remember that in art school, in like live oil painting class, and like, dude, seriously. You can see the colors on the palette here. It's just there's no peach. But hey, as I mentioned before, I've got some fan art that I wanted to show you. So let me show you that really quick.
Oh my God!
You see? Okay.
Yep.
Awesome. Awesome. This is by Alberto Arias.
Very nice. Thank you, Alberto. Very cool. I always feel bad. I maybe used way too much flesh tone just for all that skull.
Yeah. You used way too much peach, my friend. The peach color.
I think he's got the eyes, though. The eyes are pretty good, yeah.
No, it looks good. It's got a good character in the mouth as well. It's pretty good. Here you go. This is by Jacques Lemonnier.
Oh my God, I can't believe this. This is fantastic.
It's really funny. I don't know if he intended this, but like the body totally looks like a toddler to me. Like,
I know where he got that body from.
Oh, really?
Funny.
Is it from your drawing, or your painting?
It's from that picture that I've used of me as like, I think I've have it here in my studio somewhere. I've used this as my. I'm like 4 or 5 years old. From Philadelphia, and I'm shooting a little cap gun pistol, and I've got like a cowboy hat on, something like that. So I'm like 5 years old. That's great. So I can tell that's
hilarious. That's so funny, because I was thinking, like the classic thing with caricature, of course, is you do big head, little body. But I was like, well, he kind of made this little body literally look like a little body. It's pretty funny.
That's fantastic.
This is Dominic Zeilinger.
Wow, very wild.
That's pretty cool. This one actually looks like a marker drawing.
Yeah, I was going to say, it was almost Robert Rishko like.
Oh, yeah. That's great. Here's one from Eugenio Candia.
I can't believe it. That's great.
It's pretty cool.
Very cool.
Digital airbrush or something. And this is the last one. This is by Juan Gastelum.
Oh, that's great. Well, now I know what I can do for Halloween this year.
Yeah. Like he's got some explaining to do, Juan Gastelum, because he submits every once in a while, and every single one of them, there's so many more questions I have. Like, why? What's going on here? He does some crazy things. It's pretty funny.
That's great.
In fact, he needs to answer some questions, because a few of my guests, we were just like, what is happening? Like there's like one of them had all these crazy things happening in the background that I did not quite understand. He put her in a UFO spaceship, and I don't know. Pretty fun though. But anyway, thank you people for submitting art. That's awesome.
Yeah, thank you all very much for that. I really do appreciate it.
Yeah, it's always fun. Obviously, there's not as much going on. We're kind of, it's awesome that you're playing hockey again. But is there anything coming up, or any cool things you can share or promote before we go? Like, I want to make sure people follow you and
Sure.
all that sort of stuff too. But
Well, some of the time I've been taking during this pandemic is I'm putting together some online classes.
oh,
So,
cool.
Yeah, so I'm going to be pushing those. I'll be a media whore for the foreseeable future, and they should be completed over the next couple of weeks. And
That's awesome.
Yeah, so that's a new thing for me.
And what's that going to be through?
It's basically just through me. I'm doing everything myself,
cool.
so I'm not
Awesome.
going one of those things. So I can keep all the money.
Yeah. Well, let me know when you do that again. I'll help promote it for sure. That'd be awesome.
Yeah, like
Really
I said,
cool.
all this is going to be probably coming up this month. We're almost into August, so
That's really cool.
yeah. So that's taking up a lot of my time right now.
I imagine. I know I have there's a thing called Lightbox. That's like it's going to be an online convention this year because it got canceled. I went to it last year in Pasadena. So I'm going to be doing like a live demo for it at some point. But it's really interesting because they're doing it all online. So there's actual, you can go through to people's tables and booths, but online, and you can see their artwork and stuff. So I'm trying to work on some demos for that, like sort of like tutorial type stuff.
Sure.
But that's always, it's always interesting to try to do in the middle of working on deadlines and stuff, then trying to like set a time along to do. This is how I do this,
Yeah, exactly.
So it's
whenever I do demos, I always think, well, if I could do that with the job I'm actually getting paid for, that would work out well.
yeah.
Last time I had done that was it was the last children's book I was working with Carl Reiner on, and I was teaching, physically in Philadelphia at that time, and so that's what I did every week. I would go, all right, today I'm going to do a demo, and I would do a page out of the children's book. So
Wow, that was a good idea. That's a really smart idea, actually. Yeah, but the thing is, with most illustration stuff, you can't. It's got to be, online. Anyways, you can't really share it, so you got to be careful with that. But
yeah. Right.
Anyways, hey, thank you so much, man, for taking the time.
Okay, so this really it was a blast. It was great to be able to do it.
Yeah, same here. All right, thanks so much, and thank you, everybody, and we'll all talk soon.
Yeah, thanks, everybody. Bye-bye.
You want answers? The truth shall set you free. I think I'm entitled. You want answers? I want the truth. You can't handle the truth.